6 weeks ago, I was at both a psychological and physiological rock bottom, completely burnt out. And today, I pretty much feel like my normal self and back to being me. So in this video, I want to share with you my personal experience with at-home ketamine therapy. I'm going to, of course, cover how the process works, what we know scientifically regarding how it supports mental health, but more importantly, just take you along the journey with me over the 6 weeks that I took off of many aspects of my life so that you can get the insights, discoveries, and key takeaways that really facilitated this subtle yet very real transformation. Hi, I'm Jess. I'm a clinical nutritionist, and I really focus my research and these videos on nutritional and lifestyle support for better mental health. Maybe you're watching this video because you've also been experiencing a lot of burnout and you're wondering if ketamine therapy can be a cure for it. Or maybe you're just interested in at-home ketamine therapy in general for overall mental health support. One interesting thing about this journey of choosing to do ketamine therapy for what I believe to be burnout was actually discovering that there were many other layers of emotions and things going on with me besides just burnout, which we'll get to. But to give you more context into this choice, this is actually not the first time that I've done ketamine therapy. I explored it a few years ago when I was processing a lot of grief, and I felt like that grief was just trapped in my physical body. And the ketamine therapy was not only very therapeutic, but it provided me with a very safe space to release all of those emotions. So I had already had a very positive experience with ketamine therapy leading up to this. Enter burnout cycle. Let me know in the comments below if you at all relate to this, but I tend to go through 2 to 3 year cycles where I'm building resiliency, I'm taking on more and more both psychologically and physiologically, and I get a lot of amazing things done during these periods. I feel very accomplished. But there's some point in time where I keep adding and adding and adding, and eventually it's too much for my nervous system and it crashes. Even though I've become brutally aware of these cycles for myself and am so passionate about self-care for that reason, it's almost as if once you start realizing it, it admittedly is already a little bit too late. And then also admittedly, I think there's like a little bit of resistance to seeing that you're in that space because you don't want to have to slow down. And yet there's always a point where I have to acknowledge that I'm beginning to cycle downwards, mainly because of how it always starts showing up in my physical health. I start getting more flares and longer periods of chronic fatigue, energy crashes, and just feeling emotionally unstable. So a few months ago, I start recognizing this, and I'm curious to see if ketamine can help me identify something I'm missing, or maybe even help me sidestep completely getting to that rock bottom. But let's dive into a brief snippet of the science of ketamine therapy. Don't worry, I'm going to make it super short and effective, but it's going to be a good layer and foundation for taking you through this journey with me. So ketamine was first synthesized in the 1960s and quickly gained popularity due to its safety profile. Unlike other anesthetics, ketamine didn't suppress breathing or heart rate as much, making it ideal for surgeries. In the early 2000s, researchers noticed that low-dose ketamine provided rapid antidepressant effects in people with treatment-resistant depressive disorders. This discovery opened up a new chapter for ketamine as a groundbreaking tool for mental health care. So how exactly does ketamine work? It really has to do with neuroplasticity. Depression and burnout are often linked to rigid and overused neural pathways. When we're stuck in negative thought patterns of chronic stress, our brains struggle to form new connections, a process that is basically impaired neuroplasticity. Ketamine is an NMDA receptor agonist, which means that it blocks NMDA receptors in the brain. These receptors play a role in regulating glutamate, a neurotransmitter involved in learning and memory. So by blocking the NMDA receptors, ketamine increases the availability of glutamate. This creates a cascade of events that strengthen synapses and encourage the growth of new neural connections, essentially rewiring the brain. One metaphor that I really love and I think is super helpful in trying to understand neuroplasticity is thinking about your brain kind of like a forest. Depression causes the pathways or trails in the forest to become overgrown, making it harder to navigate or form new trails. Ketamine clears away the overgrowth, allowing new paths to emerge and old ones to repair too, which is really beautiful. So there's several different ways to administer ketamine therapy, and a lot of ketamine clinics do ketamine infusions. Ketamine infusions are much stronger and faster acting than something like sublingual ketamine because it's delivered directly into your bloodstream. Sublingual ketamine taken as a lozenge or under your tongue absorbs more slowly, not as completely, so tends to have a more mild effect. That being said, I don't think that one is necessarily better. They're just different experiences. So injections might be great if you're looking for a more intense psychedelic experience with a high degree of what's referred to as disassociation. But I think sublingual ketamine is better for gentler, at-home treatments that have the potential to produce mild to moderate levels of disassociation. I will leave a link to an article below that discusses the cost and benefit of each ketamine route in more detail if you're interested in checking that out. I've chosen the sublingual route, one, because of cost. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think that my mental health concerns or episodes have ever been bad enough to me to warrant the very high price of ketamine infusions. And two, I'm a highly sensitive physical being where less is generally more in terms of substances. The milder experience honestly has always allowed me to go into each ketamine session without any sort of fear regarding a negative outcome or a bad trip or anything like that. I've still had incredibly emotional and intense experiences and yet feel incredibly safe and just free to feel my feelings. So I've used the company Mindbloom both times I've done it, and my experience was pretty great within the first time that I didn't find the need to try a different company. How Mindbloom works is you first meet with a prescribing provider. Both times I've met with a psychiatric nurse practitioner. You tell them essentially what's going on and why you want to try ketamine, and they screen you, make sure that it's appropriate. And then they also help determine what's going to be an appropriate dose for you. After all of that is set, they mail you the therapy with very detailed instructions. There's an app that you follow. And now Mindbloom has topic-specific programs now, like a 6-week burnout program, which is what I decided to follow. If you want to learn more about the exact burnout program that I did or just Mindbloom and their services, then definitely check out the link in the description. Psychedelic therapy does vary by state. Mindbloom doesn't operate in every state, but go check their site out and see if it potentially operates in yours. It is day 1 of our 6-week ketamine process. We just did some journaling on Chan, and we're gonna get started on the first session. Don't really know how much I'm gonna want to be on camera, but I'll try and record some of my thoughts for you after I go through everything. My first session was very gentle, overall positive. One thing that is recommended, like right after you come out of a session, when you're kind of still in that haze, is actually journaling and reflecting, and that way you don't forget about some of the things that may have come up for you that you really want to remember. What I like to do is actually just start voice noting as soon as I come out of things, and that way I can just talk about my experience to myself, and I find that talking about it not only reinforces that experience in my memory, but I can always go back and listen to it later, whether it's the next day or anytime I want to dig deeper into anything that may have come up for me. One thing that I remember and noted from this session is that my intention was to connect to my higher self, and I kept trying to talk to my higher self, Jess, but I just kept getting these visualizations of her just sleeping and not really being available yet for me to connect with her. But it got a little bit more interesting after the second session.
Okay, it is week 2. Last week, I didn't do the full dose. I hadn't done ketamine in a while, and so I just kind of wanted to ease back into it. So we're gonna do the full dose today, even though honestly, I don't really feel very up for it today. I'm super exhausted this week. I started a new job recently. But yeah, that's the plan. So we're gonna stick with it. The intention for today is to just stay open and show up for the process, and we'll see what happens.
So this ended up being a very emotional experience for me, alternating between crying and laughing, but mainly crying. And it was unfortunate because it was one of the days that my boyfriend was in the other room as like my sitter. And I did warn him beforehand, like, hey, anything could happen. I might be crying the whole time. Like, don't worry about it. But it did end up being a session where a lot of emotions and grief came up. Okay, so it's the next day. Yesterday was pretty emotional. I think the first time not taking the full dose, maybe that would have happened the first time. But like the first time I did ketamine, the first time I took it, I cried most of the time. And I think it was just releasing a lot of like emotions that had been in me. And that was what I felt yesterday. I think I wanted to do this program to kind of sidestep potentially getting to my rock bottom of burnout cycles that I go through every 2 to 3 years. And what came up yesterday was actually accepting that, like, oh, I'm actually already in that place right now. And just kind of feeling the grief around that like as much as I have kind of pushed my body to do certain things, it has kind of reached mentally and physically, it has kind of reached a limit. And we'll see where we're gonna go from here. So after that really emotional experience, my next few sessions were essentially just about exploring, now that I accept this, what's next? So sessions 3 and 4, my intentions were really just centered around having self-compassion, allowing myself to be in this space. And through that, after session 4, I had probably one of the biggest realizations of the 6 weeks.
I did realize, not during that session, but after, it was really the next day where I was kind of journaling some of my thoughts, that I kind of realized that my burnout has actually really just been another word or a mask for like high functioning depression. And if you're not familiar with high functioning depression, then, future A-roll Jess, can you please talk about what that is for a minute?
High functioning depression. So signs of high functioning depression from Dr. Julie, leave a link below, is 1, you do everything the world asks of you, so no one knows that you feel empty inside. 2, you work hard, but you never really feel energized or enthusiastic where you used to find pleasure. So you're essentially just going through the motions every day. Numbing feelings and then behaviors, so whether this is binge watching TV, social media, eating junk food, etc. 4, social events feel more like hard work than fun because it takes so much effort to just keep up the appearance of being happy or okay. And then 5, I think a really important one is the high functioning ends when no one is looking. So it took me 4 weeks to realize that my burnout was essentially a mask I was kind of putting on my state of high functioning depression. And the truth is, I'm very prone to depression. I mean, I have a channel about nutrition and natural medicine for mental health for a reason. But I think because externally, I actually have so many really great things going on in my life, I wasn't making that connection.
That being said, I feel like it's really been through this experience that I've gotten to a turning point of really understanding and acknowledging and accepting where I've been. And now I'm at the point where I want to reconnect with joy and kind of delve into what that means for me at this point in my life. So, week 5, intentions for week 5 is to reconnect with joy and see what that's all about and see what's going to happen on the other end of all of this.
So my final sessions were really about reconnecting with joy and gratitude for all of those amazing things that I have going on without all the noise and responsibility and guilt thoughts about how I should be spending my time. Quite honestly, I think that the thing that is the most fun for me is just being. And yet it's something that I've always really struggled with, and as I get older, it becomes even more challenging.
This week, I really just want to focus on gratitude and being grateful for myself, the time that I've given myself for this, and just the wonderful things that I do have going on in my life, and the people, that I am always grateful for and yet maybe wasn't as connected to. So, final session. Let's do it.
The thing about ketamine therapy and why I think it's so great for even short-term breakthroughs and transformations is that it helps you experience your life from a new perspective. And it allows people to break free from repetitive ways of thinking where you might feel stuck and like there's no other options or like something has to be a certain way. But it doesn't. There's still so much agency and choice and options. For me, taking this time off to do ketamine not only gave me the mental break and space that I needed, but it helped me see that I could actually take my life in various different directions and be just as happy as the direction that I previously thought things had to go in. A great example of this is this channel. When I started it, I wanted it to be really focused and niche on like nutrition for mental health, but I always wanted to open it up to be about more. And so I'm gonna start doing that, where it's gonna be about like other lifestyle factors and health and just generally things that I do or I'm interested in to support mental health and other women on a similar journey. The beautiful thing about rock bottoms is once you accept where you're at, then you can change. Right now, I feel much more at peace with my life, where I'm at, where I'm not at yet, and just overall the pace of things. But I want to know from you in the comments below what interests you about ketamine therapy or any other questions that you may have. And hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.